I can describe everything in the trauma of a long-term traumatized person. And that is why I can now look very closely at phases of collective traumatization, and I am horrified by the potential of what is happening there. So prevention is now the most important thing. And also from resilience research, what can you give people in a crisis so that they don't go crazy and don't have post-traumatic stress symptoms afterwards?
Yes, that is exactly the problem.
So what makes people resilient? What protects them? The worst level is thoughts. Every monk says that. If you give a person the feeling that my situation is hopeless, just think of Viktor Frankl, the people who were in the concentration camp, who dealt with the time afterwards, as absurd as that is. You could have starved to death tomorrow, or be sent into special suicide missions, who have nevertheless dealt with it. Which fruit tree should I grow in my allotment garden? Which round will I go with my dog again? They hardly had any symptoms afterwards, and now someone as poor as Paul Celan, who really only had his poetry and the perception of the situation, writes in Black Milk of the Morning, "We don't drink in the morning, in the evening, at night, or ugh, chimneys. People are like that afterwards broken and take their own lives." So the mantra is a protective cloak through thoughts, which are the control point in every form of psychological warfare, described from the monk's point of view, which are the weapon against demons of every kind. And if it was so bad, please don't feel too bad for me. I'm just using the situation to describe the depth of the fear of death. So when I started using the mantra in my mid-30s to pry out the depths of my traumatized soul, layer by layer, I of course repeatedly went through phases of going crazy. There's nothing you can do. Everything slips away. Then I said to myself, I don't blame myself for being, let's say, an emotional bedwetter. So my bed was dry, but I was mentally shitting myself in fear and couldn't get anything barked. On the day, instead of blaming yourself and kicking ass, shit. You have to be able to concentrate, instead of saying that nothing is going to happen that day. What else is going on then? Do you always manage to go down there? So what, I'll give you another supplement, because the answer lives in the question, how can I easily be an all-round happy person even under such circumstances? Do you notice? The question draws attention. So this is the third exercise for those who don't have a mantra or an emotional exercise. Goes into the question. A question is different from a statement. The statement fixes you. It nails you down, as does a point of view. A mystic has no points of view. He has a flowing identity, and you come into a flowing identity through questions. Now what matters is what you ask for. Are you asking, how much longer can I survive? How long does toilet paper last? No. Can I still do it? No. Don't question yourself, but ask about what seems unattainable to you now. What am I like? Instead of defiance, what am I like under such circumstances? I'm not splitting anything off. I am in perception. How can I still be an all-round happy person under such circumstances, and now being unashamedly playful and easy? And this question turns tunnel vision into something that suddenly gives you a wide angle, almost fisheye, so you still have your back. And please throw this question like a feather to the wind. So don't process them mentally, because everything is mental. Concepts, crisis situations, all off course. All your suggestions that life can be planned. You have everything under control. Here you have a recipe that will lead you to success. All concept fetishists are now biting the granite. But when you're aware, you actually always get through. Nature and small children always challenge you. They always do things differently than expected. In this respect, they also make them crisis-proof, and anyone who loves outdoors a lot. But I didn't expect any help with the storm, so I'm out in the sea kayak often enough. The weather is changing, the wind has a different direction, the waves no longer have the format that I love. And then I ask myself, how do I reach the shore in a playful and easy way? I'm just wondering. And then ideas just come. Partly I start to converse with the waves. Well, you little monster, look. You're already full, you don't like me. Can you please leave me a gap and stuff? So I'm non-stop. In this respect, I continue to be open. Fear creates a concept very quickly. Help, I have to die. And then the body converts this into neuronal messengers, and the body is already switching to dying.
I think what you just summarized is great. I'm glad that I was able to listen to you, and that all the richness of your practice has now come to light, so to speak. That I actually just came up with my question in the Orgos.
But I can then explain the emotional exercise again.
Yes, please, explain. It's coming back again.
Well, when I still suffered extremely from anxiety disorders, that was the case. I couldn't go into a cafe because I was afraid that my mother could kill me at any time. There are a lot of strangers sitting here. Who knows what they can do to you? It was bad to let such sentences and feelings come into consciousness in the first place, and not to be ashamed of it. But I told myself, I'm just a survivor and others have already killed themselves, or are on drugs or alcohol, because then you have a circle of artist friends and you know what they've been through. So family violence is an issue that is swept under the table. And then what always annoyed me in the Bible was that there is no fear in love. And then I thought, yes, I would like to get rid of my fear. But unfortunately, I'm not in love either. How do I get into this stupid love? Fear is not in love. Yes, great, you John's letters in the New Testament. I always knew love is salvation. Yes, it's very easy. Just think of a situation with cuddling and please not the picture. But take the body feeling, and be it that you have something from the erotic emotional area, you are then out of survival mode. The body immediately switches to the other mode. And the more you do it, maybe just 5 seconds is enough at the beginning. How did I feel proud as a frightened person? Just be full of peace and calm for 5 seconds. And now it's like a tramp ride on a meadow. But you can also take the body feeling away from your favorite activity, surfing or gardening or hiking. The body stores it. Great. So now we have mantra for the mind, then love mysticism beginnings for the heart as protection, and so that you retain the ability to act. Always ask about what is no longer possible. How is this about being playful and easy? So when I realized, wow, now everything is gone with all mysticism seminars, how can I still continue my mystic work in a playful and easy way, even publicly? Yes, and then the idea just came to me that I should now delete the one video, which I then deleted again, that I first tried to be in contact with people the way they are now, as long as I could. And because people now asked for newsletters or something you can't give as a handout, so newsletter number 1 was written, and then really different perspectives. How to deal with fear of death, including the Frankl story with the concentration camp people.
I just want to hook you, because for me, your practice presupposes that you deal responsibly with what you allow into your mind. Because we don't let everyone into our house, we sort out very carefully what we do with our bodies, who we get involved with, but we let so much into our minds. And if we learn a little bit, even in such an exceptional situation that we are in right now, to enable us to have media competence, so to speak, by saying that we check everything, and as soon as we feel it, we do it too. So that's how we do it, become more responsible with them, and then go into what you just described. This means that everyday life does not just consist of the usual consumption of opinions and attitudes, but that one's own opinion and attitude and one's own feeling in the practice that you have just described also receive a great deal of importance in the day. We now have the opportunity to do that. So we have more time for things like this than before, because our everyday lives have changed radically at the moment. This means that we are also invited to question things here. How do I want to live? How do I deal with my newfound time? How do I make sure that I don't just allow myself to be stressed? So that would be...
Well, media literacy is put quite nicely, and I live as a media minimalist. And then I notice, oh, here in Kiel the Eckigator is running around in the house and is constantly getting upset about political measures, or how can people be so gullible or something like that. Well, he just has his own opinion and I always get in trouble. And of course I set the right time frame for myself. How much information about the latest situation do I take in? But my question, how does this work, in a playful and easy way, simply led me to this. This is perhaps the fourth tip. Please never stare at the problem, always ask for the solution. And then I just asked myself, how can it be done in a playful and easy way? Even in Corona times, or under, let's say for me, political measures that trigger a little light, close feeling as an ex-OC. How do I deal with it all coming up in Hey Presto? I said to myself, my time is much worth it. I now need time to find out about lots of great solutions on the internet so that I can imagine a wonderful time afterwards. The second thing, which I had to introduce here, is to make an appointment with Ekigator so that I say, I'm happy to talk to you about Corona and politics and other people, how they're dealing with it, and that you're worried about them entertain. But please, let's negotiate this now, half an hour a day, or an hour a day, and that one behind the other as a block, and then please be quiet. It was crazy for him to deal with it so consciously, but that was possible because I said, especially in such stressful times, this is precious lifetime. So I'll compare that now with my time studying theology in the GDR. So I didn't study theology at a university, but at a church institution that doesn't even have the right to award doctorates, the Sprachenkonvikt Berlin. This has merged with the theological faculty of the Humboldt University and the Church University in West Berlin. And that's how things were at the time of reunification, which in my opinion really ruined our lives. The lecture began with who of my fellow students is now incarcerated again and is now in prison. Anyone who is a fellow student is a friend. Well, partly because when you studied theology, you even had your parents against you. So, now one of my beloved lecturers has actually announced the names of who is now back in prison. And they were completely desperate to say whether they would ask us not to go, because the matter is important. They knew we were in danger. And for me, it was also an exam semester. And I thought, yes, if you go to a demonstration and sit in jail, you won't be able to take your exams. It was sleepless. And everyday life was always dictated by the latest political news. Monday demos, Leipzig, and stuff like that. And we were always afraid, the Czech solution, that Russian tanks would come in. These are all primal traumas that then explode. And the teaching for me is similar to what I told Karl Barth in the monastery. Politics shouldn't be so important that it ruins your everyday life. Everyday life gives the monk stability. That's why it's called ora et labora. Ora is about breaking boundaries. It is the adventure area, so to speak, a mystical experience. But in this case, we can also say that there is a bit too much adventure in life. And labora really is the consistent thing, so every liturgy also has an ordinary and a proprium, the tempor. Ordinary is what always remains the same. And this other would say balance, yin and yang. If there's too much adventure, be it if you allow yourself to act obsessively or compulsively, then yes, then polish the floor 3 times a day or so, if that gives you a feeling of security. But please reduce the other one. So I would always say, instead of excluding something, shift your focus, consciously shift your energies, your attention to everything that makes you big, wide, and light. And until then, try not to talk anyone out of their fear. But you can't control a person, maybe by yelling at them. But that's violence. So you can't control a really normal person. But you have the freedom to behave towards him. And when you say, that's so stressful for me, that makes me small, heavy, and narrow, then reduce contact. But someone, when I was still anxious or depressed, someone who wanted to tell me how to go away, I became aggressive. So back then I couldn't and didn't want to let fear or depression take away from me. And then I started attacking the other person. You cannot free someone else's consciousness. You can make offers, but your offer remains a gift.
Yes, we can't convince anyone with other views that we have, which may not be so common, but we can simply live and model our way of life.
And in a situation like that, as I said, as an ex-depression junkie, I'm actually an absolute relationship burdock. And I never used to leave anything out, worrying about being allowed to worry about someone. One is, if you're the worrying type, put the person you're worried about on the back burner. So that would be, I'm not, and I also love Egon and Karen or something like that. Hang it at the back. From a mystical perspective, if you are worried about someone, you are sending them fear.
Yes.
And that is exactly the opposite. But if you add the person's name to the back, then you place them in this clear, loving light of consciousness. And on top of that, you are relieved and you don't have to carry them, but you lead this person into the light.